Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer at Starbucks Trader Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, the 14th of January. Whole bunch of, I think the word of the day that summarizes today's price action is rotation. And I will certainly talk a bit about some of those rotations that we are seeing in the market. Particularly, I think the most telling thing that you're going to see, if you look to the right of the spreadsheet, you can see that there's a little bit of red here. Really, what's particularly interesting is large cap growth right now is down year to date, down 0.5%. And look at the difference between large cap growth and small cap growth, which is up 7% year to date. Having a banner year, having a great year so far. I mean, we're talking about a couple weeks, and to see small cap value and small cap growth both up about 7% year to date versus you look at some of the other stocks, and if you're not in the right group of stocks right now, you're scratching your head right now. But if you're paying attention to what the market is telling you, I'm giving myself a little bit of credit too, a little pat on the back too. But if you're watching some of these videos, if you're in the Tribeca Trade Group room, you know that we've been seeing this since the very first day of 2016. So the move, like I saw, there's a lot of posts today about the move in software stocks. This should not be a surprise. You should have figured this out on the first trading day of the year. So I will review that with you in just a second. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. And then I will talk about the some of the outperformers today. Look at Bitcoin up 3.5%. That's a heck of a trade that we put on yesterday. So let me get to the charts because I want to get right to that. I don't want to make today's video very long, but let me go right to something that I was tweeting out earlier today. Also was in our Substack. Make sure that you're involved in our Substack. Where do I have this here? Go to blah, 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 blah. And you should be able to see that now. Why is this not scrolling? But in any event, that's where you go to sign up for our midday note, which is tddtrading.substack.com. But I mentioned, hey, we're into some support, right? So this is right around like 1 o'clock today. And that's a level to trade from. Let's see if I can zoom in on this right there. Right. So 685.94, right? And that also, that top of the value area for the month lines up with the value area for January, which is a significant level. Look at how we finished for the day. Right? We tagged that perfectly and managed to hold, and you got a nice hammer candle off of that for SPY. So again, volume at price. You know, as far as I know, this is the best volume at price indicator out there, right? You could of course try to do things like anchored VWAP, right, which is a very similar concept using the same type of concepts, but with anchored VWAP, it's subjective because you got to pick where you're anchoring from. Here, there's no it's not subject at all. It's based on time periods. So, for instance, the top of the value area is based on where we're extracting that level is from all of last month's activity, right? And that becomes significant, and hence the bounce perfectly right off that level. Looking at the 1 hour chart here too in SPY, you're going to see a little bit more granular because we zoomed all the way through the value area for the week, which is here. So we managed to get back above that. We're kind of right in the middle of this. So I think the overall market doesn't really know what it wants to do at this point. We still don't know what's going to happen with this Supreme Court ruling on tariffs, which is a little bit of a overhang for the market. So we've got to wait for that. But overall, there's a lot of strength in this market. It's just in different areas of the market. And again, this is a market that's going to keep you on your toes. It's not going to just lull you to hey, you could be in some of the names that worked well the last couple of years. So let's examine that. Let me talk about the bad first, and then we'll talk about what's really working right now in this market. So you could slice this a couple different ways. I'm going to use the FANG index, the NY FANG index, which covers a lot of different names, but this is what's doing poorly right now. And now it did hold support, but like I said, the first trading day of the year gave you this information already. It gave you this information that there was a rotation out. The last few days, when the rest of the market was going up, this index just kind of hung out here, right? Try to get back and reclaim that value area for the month. Couldn't do it, right? So look at the difference between this, right? Which again is your large cap names, your large cap tech names mostly, and then look at the difference between this and look at IWO, right? Do you see what's going on here, right? So this is what is working really well right now. Now, this may change, and that's the whole thing with trading, right? We're not making any predictions here. We're just making some observations, and right now, this is a much better place to be in. Hence, you could also look at QQQJ, right? It's very similar. It's not exactly the same, but notice what this has been doing since the beginning of the year. Right, this is your next gen 100, or people call it the junior Qs, and you could look at this versus the senior Q, as I call them, the senior Qs. Again, not as bad as that FANG index because it's more diversified, uh, or the lag 7, as you if you want to call them. But it's definitely, this has not gone anywhere for the last few months, right? Since going back to where we were at the end of October, this has basically gone sideways. Now, not to say that there's hasn't been trading opportunities here, but the overall performance since the end of October in the Qs is essentially flat. All right. One other thing I'm going to show you too, as I mentioned, software. All of a sudden, people, you know, coming to this conclusion. I saw so many posts yesterday about, oh my God, like software is really breaking down. Yeah, hello. The first trading day of the year gave you that information. There was a major rotation out, right? And I was tweeting about this, and I said that day, I said software stocks. I forget what they were down. Let's bring this up so that you could see this. But you could also follow. You could also see this on my Twitter feed. But let's go to. Oh, I got the wrong screen up here, and I got to flip this here. All right. So if you look at this, all right, what we're looking at is the IGV ETF. Oops, I just lost the screen. IGV ETF, first trading day of the month, down 2.9%. Right, right there, 2.9%. Now, remember what the semis did. I'm going to bring up SMH. The semis did the exact opposite and even better. Right, so that should tell you that there was a rotation that started right in the beginning, right in front of your face, right? Big rotation into semis in the start of this year, where the SMH ETF was up 3.6%, and what did I say? IGV was down, the software ETF, 2.9%, right? 2.9%. Let's go back to the charts for a second. So that should have that I'm not saying like that always continues, but here is your break of the value area for the month. Now we kind of came back up and it tried to rally, and there's a rejection. So basically that's a textbook way to use the value areas. Here's your break of the value area, retest, fail, and this should not there's nothing here that's telling you that to go in and start buying the dip in software names. So support down here. Now, I'm talking very negative about software, right? This could perk up, right? I'm not making any predictions. I'm just telling you right now that this is the weakest area of tech, and I don't want to be in that. I'm not a bottom fisher. Maybe on earnings, like ServiceNow will report earnings in a couple weeks. NOW, that might be something that I give a shot for earnings because they have a really good earnings history. But these are all breaking down, right? Right. And here's the earnings history for ServiceNow and why I like to play this name for earnings, right? Because look at the history, right? And again, I'm not looking at any of the numbers other than price. I want to know what price does on earnings, and it has a really good history of rallying. So that may be setting up for that. But other than that, I mean, here's the thing: as I'm going to move away from this concept, this conversation about some of these names that are trending down, they have the chance to flip back up. When do they have the chance to do that? On earnings. So earnings always sets the tone for who's going to be your market leaders for the next quarter. So we don't have that information yet. So again, as negative as I am right now on large cap growth and large cap tech, we'll have to pay attention to what earnings is going to tell us. But I think this is one of those things that I just have thought for a while that at some point these large tech names are going to lose market leadership. Again, I would never try to predict when that's going to be, but um, you know, double top in here for Microsoft. But I just kind of figured, like, what's going to happen if this market loses the leadership of the FANG names, right? And I think that we've so far we kind of have our answer is that the rest of the stock market is very healthy, right? And you're seeing things like small cap tech and growth accelerate to the upside and take the place of the market leadership. What else is doing very well? Well, the same things. And again, like this is right now is just riding these trends at this point. I would not. Somebody asked me on Twitter because I'm going to get to aerospace and defense. They're like, "Well, what would you buy now?" It's tough. You kind of just have to wait for a little bit of consolidation, and I'll go over one that was consolidating a little bit the last couple days, but XME metals and mining just continues to act very well. This is a really nice cup and handle pattern, right? And that's where your market leadership is. Uranium stocks are acting really well too. And so there's little bits and like there's offshoots of what the metals and mining are doing. Copper stocks are doing really well. They're not giving you, and that's what market leadership is, right? It won't give you an opportunity to get into some of these names, right? They're just trending and they're trending without pullback. But this is how whatever the market decides is going to be the leader, it tries to keep you out of the leadership areas of the market. And this is one of them, right? AA, right? Little bit of consolidation up here. FCX, right? These are all stretched, but again, that's what when that's what market leaders do. They don't allow you to get into the names. They just keep trending. So that's what we've got going on. I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin. Bitcoin gave us a really nice signal the other day for a turn. If you've been watching my videos, you know it. Right here was the moving out of into the resistance of the top of the value area for the month. All right. And then the very next day, which was yesterday, we got to move above. And notice again how the 50-day moving average lined up very closely with that resistance. Right, broke above resistance. This is now going to trigger the bullish 80. This should trigger the bullish 80% rule for the year, but now you're trending inside the year. So my target up here is 58.23 for the Bitcoin ETF. That's what I'm looking for. We also covered yesterday, which I did not take this one, but this is also acting very well, is now Ethereum, right? And that also got back above the 200-day moving average. This is actually a bit stronger than Bitcoin. So very nice, trying to move out of this. And, maybe we start to see this group begin to go. Right? And that's what's exciting about this market is you're seeing this. And this is also something that I talked about a couple days ago. Right? This is another one of those instruments that made its high back in September, October, made a little bit of a lower high then, basing for a little bit, and now starting to resolve higher again. So we're seeing that in a lot of places right now in this market. What has me so next? What's next on the list? Well, let me go over aerospace and defense, but I've got a new group to kind of keep an eye on for you guys. Here's aerospace and defense. Notice into the 5-day moving average and rallied pretty nicely. Look at Rocket Labs today. Here was a little bit of consolidation, and look at this thing, back up 6%. Here's a name that you probably may not be familiar with, but we've tweeted about it at Tribeca Trade Group, and this is LPTH. Look at this name today, right? Up 13%, right? And again, look at a little bit of consolidation and moving towards this VPOC up here, which is at 1359. All right, what else did I want to cover? I didn't talk at all about the RSP today, but look at this continuing to trend. Right, this was another thing that if you caught my midday note, sorry, I'm really plugging the midday note today, but if you caught my midday note, you would have known that even though the S&P was down about that SPY was down 1%, there was over 25% of the index was making a new 4-week high. That's something you don't normally see. Here's what this looks like. Right. So, and now this has changed a little bit, but this is something again that I send out. Let's see if I have this somewhere here. Let me close this. All right, going back to this midday note. Right. 25% of the S&P was hitting a 4-week new high today, while the SPY was down almost 1%. Very rarely do I see something like that. So again, it just tells me that they're rotating out of some of the areas that we already talked about right now. All right, so real quick, I mentioned that I would go over a group that I think is poised. It should be definitely watched at this point. Right, take a look at what the quantum names are doing. I'm going to go through one by one here with this one. This is QBTS, right? Now it's got to break above this 30.23, but it's damn near close. And I put on a starter position in this thing today because I don't, it's tough to trust the quantum group. But you go through one by one. Look at, I actually like this chart the best. This is QUBT. Right? Look at how sideways and it's not exactly coiled up, but it's the price action is very tight in here. IONQ. Right. So maybe some like if there's some type of an announcement with like the administration talks about using, hey, we're going to award quantum for something, right? This group should go, but of course you're going to need some type of news as a catalyst. But the group is looks very good. RGTI is probably the one that I like the least. Right, but it's also look at the price action. These things are going to break one way or another. I wouldn't rule out a downside break too. That could happen, but there's so many things that are doing this, right? That made their high somewhere in September, October, and then are basing for a couple months and then starting to turn back up again, right? That's what this market is doing right now. So I would definitely keep an eye on this group. For now, I went long some QBTS. I also own in the TTG Global portfolio the quantum ETFs. You have to be careful of this ETF because it's not exactly all those names are not the highest weighting in this ETF, but I would say it still looks pretty darn good. This is the quantum ETF. By the way, that portfolio outperformed today. Was up 0.7 of a percentage point today. We're in some of the right areas of this market. I did take profits today in my Exxon trade. I saw crude selling off today. I got a nice little move here in Exxon, and I took